Hello, everyone. Thank you for making the choice to invest in your business by joining today's event. 5 ways to get your clients' adult children and other young professionals engaged with financial planning. My name is Alex Mercer, and I'll be your host today. I'm joined by my colleague Steve Arnott, Senior Customer Success Specialist, who will provide today's demonstration and run our Q&A. Please make sure you stay for the full session today because we've got an exclusive offer for those of you who stay with us until the end. Before we get started, I'd like to do a quick tech check to make sure you can all hear me and see my screen. Just click the arrow beside the word question and a window will pop up where you can type and hit send. This is exactly how you'll send any questions you have throughout the session. Can anyone hear me? Oh, good. Okay. Thank you, Karen, Rianne, John, Karen, Catherine. Oh, Gregory. Okay, good. I'm glad you got the sound sorted out. Wonderful. Glad to know you can all hear me and see my screen. So Steve and I have our cameras turned on just to say hello. We will now shut them off to give you a full screen view of our presentation. So I'd like to start with introducing you to today's case study prospective client, Charles Thompson. Charles was born in 1990 and he resides in Ontario. He graduated from a master's program several years ago and is currently employed full-time. He's got great earning potential for the future and is investing, but without much direction. As a 33-year-old, Charles isn't necessarily thinking about his retirement just yet, but he is starting to think about his future. The financial questions he has for us today are: where am I headed with the savings I'm making now? How can I balance my current and future lifestyles? Should I repay my student loans faster or continue investing? Can I afford to buy a $500,000 home in a few years? And should I be worried about what I'm seeing in the markets? Charles's father, our longtime client, is hoping we can address these questions for his son and essentially prove the value of starting to plan now versus later in life to Charles. For those of you who aren't already familiar with Snap Projections, Snap is a Canadian financial planning software platform and part of the CI family. We help great financial advisors grow their assets under management and receive more referrals through effective financial planning. Our mission is to help Canadians make better financial decisions so they have peace of mind while they work and a better quality of life when they retire. We execute this mission through working with great financial advisors like yourselves who embrace financial planning because we believe this is the optimal way to provide sound financial advice to Canadian consumers. As the wealth management industry continues to transform, there are endless opportunities for advisors to lead with financial planning as a way to enhance their service offering, strengthen the relationship with their clients, gain more referrals, and as a result, grow an incredibly successful financial advisory practice. If you're wondering what other advisors have to say after using Snap Projections or how we compare to other solutions, you don't need to look any further than the reviews page on our website. Many advisors are currently using Snap Projections to provide financial planning for their clients and grow their practices. Recently, we spoke with Snap user Margaret Richards, who was so impressed with the customer support she received, she actually asked us if she could provide a testimonial. Margaret said, Snap Projections has the best support system of any financial planning software that I have used, and I must have used nearly 10 of them. Snap support is far superior. Wow. So let's spend a moment thinking about the why behind financial planning. We all know it's good for the clients, but what is the real value of having a financial planning process in place for you and your practice? We know that investment and insurance products are essentially the implementation part of a financial plan. So without the plan, how can you effectively communicate the value of those recommendations? Snap has been in the market and speaking directly with advisors for nearly 8 years now. What we have discovered is that successful advisors and successful advisory teams pretty much always have a financial planning process in place. Sometimes it's a light process, or maybe it's more in depth. That's going to depend entirely on your client base and what their needs are. But the common denominator to building a sustainable and growing financial advisory practice is almost always the same. A financial planning process is in place. Without that process, it's going to be harder to build a sustainable and successful practice. With that in mind, we've put an excellent resource together for you. It's called the Financial Planning Toolkit. Some of you may have already seen this before and may already be using it. In it, you will find templates, checklists, and more that will help you to optimize your financial planning process while improving consistency and efficiency. Using these resources alongside SNAP is a recipe for financial planning success. You don't need to go anywhere else to download this. It's right there for you in PDF format under your Handouts tab. So just click that now. If you click the little arrow beside the word Handouts, it'll pop up for you, and you can download that and save it to your device before the session closes out. So that brings me to our next topic, the reason we're all here today. How can we help younger Canadians understand the value financial planning can add to their lives now? How can we get them excited and engaged with the financial planning process today? I recently came across several articles in Wealth Professional talking about this very thing. According to one report, more than 70% of wealth managers say they are starting to move toward the practice of householding. The benefits are obvious, I'm sure, but it's clear that many practices are making a targeted effort to expand from serving the individual to the household and consider this a strategic competitive advantage for their firms. A recent RBC poll found that young Canadians are losing financial confidence, which I'm sure comes as a surprise to none of you. But what's so interesting here is that this lack of confidence appears to be driving an increased interest in financial planning amongst this younger age group. This particular poll found that 3 out of 10 respondents said that building their investment portfolios is a key financial priority, and nearly 2/3 are setting aside money to contribute to these portfolios. Almost half indicated they were willing to pay fees for the opportunity to gain better return on their investments. Young Canadians are worried about their financial futures, so the time is now to get in there and start those relationships early. So, how can you add value to the lives of all those worried 30-year-olds? That's exactly what Steve is about to show us. Before I hand it over, there's just one more thing we need to talk about, and that's the reality of how challenging financial planning can be. As a financial advisor, you know how much value is generated from the work you do. That's why you do it. So, given all that value that is generated from financial planning for both the clients and the practice, why aren't more advisors doing more planning? Here's what advisors tell us. Data entry takes me too long. It can easily take me hours or even days to collect the information from my clients and enter it into a planning platform. The second problem, it takes me hours to develop the projections. One plan alone can take 15 to 20 hours, and that just isn't scalable for the mass affluent market. Problem number 3, my clients don't want or understand complex 50-page reports. Their eyes glaze over. Lastly, problem number 4, I can't run quick what-if scenarios with a client in real time. Often, the adjustments and discussions throughout the planning process turn into multiple back and forth meetings that take up everyone's time. So now I'd like to hear from you. We have got a good size group here today. So it is time for a poll. You should see that popping up on your screen in just a few seconds there. Perfect. So I want all of you to tell me which one of these problems represents your top financial planning challenge. You've got 15 seconds to answer, and if there's a major challenge that you're dealing with that didn't make our list, select other and let me know what that is in the question box. A few more seconds here and we'll share the results. Don't overthink it. If all of these apply to you, which is often the case, select the one that you find the most painful or time consuming to deal with. All right, get those answers in because we have got to move on. I'm going to close the poll now in just a few more seconds, and we will be able to see what you all had to say. So 3, 2, 1, closing poll, and let's share the results quickly here. Okay, so interesting. So what we can see here is that about 5% of you are saying that something else is your biggest challenge. And that means that 95% of you here today are finding that these 4 challenges are your top problems. We've got a pretty even split between the last 3. But the number one problem here today appears to be that data entry takes me too long. So thank you everyone so much for your participation. It is always so much fun to see where we all stand as a group. And you may be wondering, well, so what? How can SNAP help solve these challenges for you? So for the percentage of you who said data entry takes me too long, and that was the vast majority, data entry does not have to be a problem for you anymore. SNAP is going to provide you with a questionnaire that simplifies the data collection process, ensuring you get the information you need. Plus, provide you with a streamlined process to quickly and effectively enter data into the software. You're going to see Steve do this in just a moment. This questionnaire has been provided to you in the financial planning toolkit that's located under your handouts tab. For the 22% of you who said it takes me hours to develop the projections, it should not take you hours and hours to build simple plans. With SNAP, you can build a basic plan in less than 20 minutes, and you're going to see that shortly here as well. The same percentage of you said my clients don't understand the reports. What good are your reports if your clients can't understand them? SNAP provides you with clear, engaging reports that have been designed for your clients. You have complete control over what's included, so the output can be as light or as detailed as makes sense for each individual client. You can also provide interactive live presentations with colorful charts that will demonstrate how your plan helps your clients meet their goals. You're going to see these charts live in action here today. And lastly, for the 23% of you who said, I can't run quick what if scenarios, building up multiple what if scenarios should not be a cumbersome process. It should be simple and easy enough that you could do it with your clients present if you wanted to. With SNAP, you can build multiple what if scenarios in real time. A few clicks, a few seconds, that's it. Each scenario you create will produce its own report and complete plan. Today, you're going to see Steve create 5 different scenarios. Now, the reason that SNAP can address these challenges for you is simple. This is a financial planning software that was designed with advisors for advisors. Because of this, SNAP is an easy to use platform. Lack of ease of use is one of the biggest barriers to software adoption. If it's hard to use, no one wants it. SNAP is transparent. When you need to explain something to your clients, you need to first be able to understand it yourself. I talk with advisors all the time who tell me that if they cannot see how the numbers are being calculated, they feel uncomfortable presenting the plan to their clients. It doesn't mean they need to run every calculation, but they need to be able to understand how the numbers were generated so they can conduct an audit if they need to. This is in stark contrast with other solutions that almost seem to hide the calculations, so advisors have no way of verifying the numbers. There's just no transparency. And that brings us to flexibility and control. Your clients' lives can be very complex at times, and it can become difficult to model. As the advisor, you need to have a very high level of flexibility and control over the plan if you want to model those lives and make the plan personal for your clients. Steve is now going to show you how simple, transparent, and flexible creating financial plans is when you're partnering with SNAP Projections. Steve will start with walking you through the basic profile setup. I want to make sure it's clear how quick and easy it is to set up a client or prospect and answer a few key questions. To run a simple projection and answer some basic questions, we just need to enter a few data points. Name, date of birth, province of residence, income, current asset holdings, and any planned contributions. That's it. We can be quick and simple, or we can conduct comprehensive financial planning. So I'll get Steve to take over now and log into Snap.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Alex. And thank you again, everyone, for joining us today. Snap Projections is a web-based platform, which means that you can sign into your account from any Chrome browser on any computer without the need for downloads. You can go to snapprojections.com, and then in the top right corner, you'll be able to see the login option. You'll enter in your username, password, and then there is an option for the added security of a multi-factor authentication. I've enabled all of those during our session today, so I'm going to click Login and go directly into the software. I'll land initially on our clients page that shows all of the projections that I've created in the past, allows me to access those plans, make further edits, and then create any client-facing material that I'd like. Today, I'm going to click on Add New Client, and we'll get started with our plan for Charles. I'll enter in his first name, last name, date of birth, and then set the province of residence to Ontario. In the top left corner of the software, you'll see that Snap Projections has three main areas of the tool. There is the scenario setup flow that we can see on the left-hand side of our screen. This is the set of input pages that allow us to create our base projection. We input client information, general settings, income, assets, debts, and other details about Charles's current financial circumstances. Once we're done with the input pages, we can progress to the planning pages, which we'll see shortly. That's where all of that data comes together in order to show Charles's life on one page and allow us to customize and tailor the plan to any unique circumstances that we'd like. When we're done customizing the plan, we can proceed to the client report, add any comments, include which pages we'd like, and then create a client-facing PDF document. So for now, we'll progress through the scenario setup, input the data for Charles's plan, and then get started answering his questions. I'll click Next at the bottom here and progress through the input pages. We're going to start our plan as of the current year, 2023. Charles doesn't know exactly when he's going to retire, but he's comfortable using a base assumption of 65 for the time being, and then we'll show a projection length until age 100. We can import the FP Canada guideline assumptions into our plan and use those for reference as we build out our inflation and rate of return assumptions. We'll leave inflation values as they were, and then for cash, fixed income, and equity, FP Canada recommends adjusting these values to account for any expected investment management fees. So I'll set those to 1%, 2%, and 5% for this plan. By clicking Next, we'll progress to the income page. Charles is currently earning $120,000 per year. That's being entered as employment income, so SNAP is going to automatically deduct CPP and EI payments. It's also going to tax it at the appropriate marginal rates for the province of residence, and then we're going to track and add in RSP eligible room. We could add additional incomes to the plan if they're receiving rental income or dividends from a corporation as an example. We can also add pension income in order to represent any defined benefit pension plans expected in the future. As we click Next, we'll progress to the assets page. You can see that Snap has automatically added a default account to illustrate how you can input capital assets in the projection. This can also serve as a tool for future excess cash flow if the client doesn't currently have a non-registered account in their name. In this case, Charles currently has all three investment types. He has a non-reg, a tax-free savings, and registered accounts. So we're going to delete the default added and input our own settings. We have a non-reg account for $25,000, and that's invested 100% as cash currently. He also has a tax-free savings account for $40,000, invested as 20% fixed income and 80% equity. He has a group RRSP for $50,000, invested as 30% fixed income, 70% equity. And then he has a personal RSP for $10,000. In addition to being able to input the various account types, we also have settings tabs to be able to customize different assumptions about those account types within the software. One common trait that you'll find with Snap is that it is quick and easy to create a base projection with existing default assumptions enabled, but we also provide the flexibility to change those assumptions in order to tailor the plan to your client's exact circumstances. So I'll click on TFSA, and that will give me the ability to adjust the assumed contribution carry forward room available to Charles. So we'll update that to $45,000. We'll click on the RRSP settings tab to make that same change for the RSP. So he has 40,000 of carry forward room as of this year. And then for the group RRSP contributions, we can set up employer matching by linking his group RSP to his employment income, and then indicating that he and his employer are each contributing 3% of his salary into the account. And that's it for entering capital assets. For the moment, Charles doesn't have any real assets to track, so we'll click Next to proceed to the debts page. Right now, there's a student loan outstanding for $30,000 with an interest rate of 7% and monthly payments of $450. We'll click Next and go to the government benefits page. Snap defaults the CPP benefit assumption to be 55% of the expected maximum. So that is based off of the national average value. Once you know a bit more about your client's current and previous employment history, you can adjust this percentage of maximum value to account for their expected value. So I'm going to increase that to 80% given Charles's high income level and his expectation for ongoing earnings. For old age security, we default the base assumption to 100% of the maximum. So if you need to, you can adjust that. But for anyone that's going to receive the full benefit, we'll leave that as is. And just like that, in 7 minutes, we've been able to input the base details for Charles's projection. You can see on the left that we've gone through the majority of these scenario setup pages. There are additional options to input insurance policies, conduct life needs analysis to see if additional life insurance would be recommended. We can add RESPs, corporations, and customize additional settings in the software. But for now, we'll move to the planning pages at the top in order to see all this data in one single page and then customize and adjust the plan for Charles's situation. So the planning page is both initially overwhelming when you first see it, but also the most powerful section of the software. We're able to see and customize on a year by year or for a given period of time, any of the blue or purple values that you see on this page. From the left-hand side, we can see the year and age for each row of the projection. We can also see how much Snap is assuming Charles is spending, what the employment income is, CPP, EI, and taxes. We can see how the investment accounts progress over time, either through growth on investments or through additional contributions. And then we can see debt payment, tax rates, and estate information. From here, we can customize the plan for any additional assumptions that Charles wants to make. The first adjustment we'll make is to change the employment income to index at the rate of inflation. So Charles is confident that his salary will at least keep pace with the cost of living over time. So we'll apply that change. And when I enter in that additional expected inflation adjustment, you'll see in the top right corner that our run scenario button has turned red. This means that we've made changes to the plan, but rather than constantly moving the numbers on us as you make changes, Snap is waiting for us to confirm that we are done making changes on this page and that we want to run those new numbers through all of the calculations and get an up-to-date financial projection. So I'll click Run Scenario, and Snap is going to recalculate everything around that new income level. We'll see that as I go to the group RSP, because I've indexed the salary, the contributions of 3% per year are now also being indexed. I can then make any additional adjustments to the plan. So currently Charles is contributing $5,000 per year into the tax-free savings account, and he plans to do that until the final year of his employment. Again, I can either click Run Scenario in order to apply those changes, or I can continue to make changes to the plan. So I'm going to also add $2,000 of RRSP personal contributions until retirement. Now I'll click Run Scenario, and we have a completed projection to be able to answer Charles's first question. So jumping back to his list of 5 questions, the first thing he wanted to know is, where am I headed with the savings I'm making now? So we have his employment income, his various savings, and we can go to the recommendations tool in Snap in order to find out how much Charles can spend each year of retirement given his current projected plan. So we'll come to the sustainable spending section of the recommendations calculator. We'll click calculate, and Snap is going to determine how much Charles can spend starting at age 65 each year of his retirement without running out of money in the projection. So we'll apply this level of spending to the plan and then take a look at what that does. For the period that Charles is working, we can scroll down and see that all of the contributions and investment growth are occurring in the plan. Then starting in 2055, at the age of 65, we see that a spending goal of $50,700 has been set. That's being adjusted for inflation in order to achieve a $98,000 nominal spending in that future year. And SNAP is getting that money from government benefits, withdrawals from the non-registered account, and withdrawals from the tax-free savings account. As we continue through retirement, we can see that SNAP is automatically making withdrawals from various accounts in order to fund the needed spending. As we get to the very last year of the plan, we can see that all of the capital assets are depleted and we're able to spend until that final year of age 100. We can also look at this in chart form. The first chart is the net worth that shows a breakdown of what the asset values are over the projection. We can see that he builds up about 1.5 million in total assets before retiring and then draws down on those assets until the end of the plan. He's spending at about $72,000 per year in the first year of the plan, and that increases with inflation as his employment income increases. And then there's a fairly significant drop from the year before and after retirement that then is inflation adjusted from that point forward. And then we also have the sources of income chart that shows where the money is coming from each year of the projection and how much taxes are expected to be paid. So this is our first scenario complete for Charles, and we've been able to answer his first question that if he continues on with his current savings plan and retires at age 65, he'd have roughly $50,000 per year of today's spending power in retirement. So we'll update the title of this scenario 1 to be current state, 50K spending. Now we can copy this scenario in order to start answering some of his other questions. So we'll create an exact replica of this scenario that we can make some changes to, and then start to answer his second question. So I'll update this to scenario 2, constant lifestyle spending. So if we jump back to his list of questions for a moment, his second one was, how can I balance my current and future lifestyles? So instead of having that large drop in retirement, what if he wanted to spend at exactly the same level on a real dollar basis from the current year until the end of the projection? So we can have SNAP help us calculate that amount of spending and then also show where to save the excess cash flow in order to achieve that consistent level of lifestyle spending. In order to do that, we'll just need to clear the overrides that we put in place previously. So instead of following Charles's existing savings plan, we're going to calculate a new option for him in order to smooth out his consumption over time. So we'll clear both of those savings goals. And then we're also going to set his spending target starting from the first year of the plan, instead of waiting until retirement to define his spending. We'll go back into recommendations once more in order to have SNAP calculate a sustainable spending level, but this time we're going to start at age 33, the first year of the projection. I'll click calculate, and SNAP is going to say how much Charles can spend starting in the current year until the end of the projection without running out of money. So in this case, it's $68,171 on an annual basis. So we'll apply that to the plan, and then we'll see what SNAP is doing in terms of deposits in order to achieve this level of spending. So in the first year, we have 68,000 of spending. SNAP has allocated 17,408 to the personal RRSP based off of the expected available cash flow given that level of spending. SNAP continues to max out the RRSP until eventually it runs out of the carry forward contribution room that we had input at the start of the plan. And we can see SNAP is now putting some money into the tax-free savings. And that continues once the debt is fully repaid and we have more cash flow. You can see that the TFSA contribution jumps up by about the same $6,000 amount. And then we continue on making contributions into the investment accounts all the way until the final year of work. SNAP then again calculates the needed withdrawals in order to achieve the constant spending, and then depletes the accounts at the very end of the plan. Going back into our charts, we can see the net worth now grows quite a bit higher. Previously, it was about 1.5 million that we were maxing out at. This is now showing a need of about 2.7 million in order to achieve that higher retirement spending level. But when we look at the after-tax spending, there's no longer a change once we hit retirement. We're inflation adjusted all the way through. We can also toggle to show this in constant real dollars or today's dollars spending in order to show that there's no adjustment throughout the plan. And then again, we can see the sources of income, where that money is coming from, and what the taxes payable are. So we've been able to answer Charles's second question. He could spend at 68,000 a year if he made some additional savings in the meantime and then spent more during retirement. The third question that Charles came to us with is about his current student loan and whether he should be making faster repayment towards that or continuing to make investments at the rate that's being shown in this projection. So we're going to copy this plan and create our third scenario for Charles. So this one we'll call scenario 3, accelerated debt payments. We can go into scenario setup and then to debts. And then we can increase the monthly payment amount from 450 currently to 900. So we're going to double the assumed monthly payment and see how that impacts the plan, whether from a dollar standpoint, it makes sense for him to do this. And then he can pair that information with any more qualitative considerations, such as wanting to end his debt so that he can start to plan towards buying a home and having that calculated debt service ratio and other considerations taken care of. We'll go back to the planning page. And as we scroll to the right, we can see that SNAP is now repaying that loan on a faster basis. So it's done in roughly 3 years instead of the previous 6. And we can also see that SNAP has reduced the contributions being made to the RSP because there's going to be less cash flow left over with those increased debt payments. So SNAP has adjusted all of the contributions and withdrawals. What we can do now is we can go to recommendations and see whether that has made the plan better off or worse off than where we were before. And we can see that by making that debt repayment change, we've overfunded the plan. So we now have a projected surplus of 27,000 in the final year of the projection if we assume that we continue spending at the same level that we were previously. So the savings over the next few years is able to compound throughout the projection and create a fairly sizable benefit to Charles's projection. So we're going to go ahead with this plan. We're going to recalculate the sustainable spending so that we're still using everything up. So it's going to increase our sustainable spending to 68,200 a year. And now this will be our base assumption for the best path forward for Charles. And we're going to create one more plan to answer his fourth question about whether he can afford to buy a home for $500,000 in a few years' time. So we'll call this scenario 4, home purchase. We'll go into scenario setup and then down to assets. And we'll go to the real asset section that we weren't using previously, and we'll click add real asset. We'll enter a description of home, a future cost of $500,000, and then a future purchase age of age 37. So we're going to do this in 4 years' time. So once again, we're adding a future purchased real asset. We're going to click next to go to the mortgage, or go to the debts page and add a mortgage for $450,000 of that purchase with an interest rate of 5%, a future start age of 37. This is just checking to make sure that we want to enter that as a future start age, where we'll get the cash infusion in that future age. And then he's going to need to pay $2,600 a month on a 25-year amortization. We can link that debt to the home so that if at any point we sell the home in the plan, SNAP will automatically repay any outstanding mortgage before using the proceeds for any investment purposes. So now that we've added the home and mortgage, we can go back to the planning pages for a moment. And we'll see that with that additional cost of $31,000 per year, Charles would not be able to continue to spend at $68,200 each year of the plan. So we can see we start to run into a cash shortfall shortly after the mortgage has been taken out. And that makes sense. We shouldn't need that level of lifestyle spending on top of the mortgage, because this is going to include things like rent, which we'll no longer have to take care of. So we can likely reduce this level of spending that would be added to the mortgage, and we can have SNAP once again calculate what that number needs to be. So we'll go into recommendations. We'll go to the sustainable spending, and then we'll say, starting at age 37, how much do we have to reduce our budget to in order to accommodate that new mortgage that we've taken out in the plan? And we can click calculate, and SNAP's going to determine what level of additional spending we'll have available on top of the budget, or sorry, on top of the mortgage, in order to avoid running out of money in the projection. So Charles would have $54,000 for lifestyle expenses that are on top of the mortgage throughout the full length of the projection. So we'll apply that to the plan. Again, we can see SNAP is automatically making withdrawals from the non-reg and TFSA in order to fund the down payment on the purchase. We can also see that there are reduced contributions to the investment accounts now that there's a mortgage added and higher expenses. Then once the mortgage eventually gets repaid, we can see that there's a few years where Charles is able to catch up on his retirement contributions, and then he retires, and we can see SNAP is automatically withdrawing money from the needed accounts. So we can go back into charts one final time and take a look at the introduction of the real asset. So now we have this real asset added to the projection. We also have the mortgage, and we have the registered and TFSA accounts layered on top of that. You can see the after-tax spending is higher for a few years, and then we add the mortgage and need to drop the other budgeted items slightly in that year of the purchase. And then we have the sources of income that shows the lump sum proceeds from the mortgage, as well as the withdrawals from the non-reg and TFSA for the down payment. We can also uncheck any of these values if you want to focus the conversation, or enable all of them to give the full transparency of what's happening in the plan. Going back to the list of questions one final time, the last thing Charles was asking about is whether he should be worried about what he's seeing currently in the markets. So we can take this scenario and run a stress tested plan using variable rates of return in order to help address his concerns and show him what types of annual returns he can expect going forward. So we'll update this scenario to scenario 5. We'll call it stress tested returns. With our base projection, we had static annual rates of return for each of the accounts based off of their asset allocation. This makes a lot of sense when creating your base recommendations, because we want to keep the plan focused on the taxes and the cash flow and what we can control within the projection. But we know that from a practical standpoint, he's not going to see 4.4% returns each and every year of his plan. And by having conversations with our clients ahead of time, we can prepare them for what they're going to actually experience and talk to them about the risks of the market and the long-term benefits of remaining invested. So within Snap, we have a additional paid add-on called stress testing, where you can use either historical rates of return and inflation values or randomized returns and inflation numbers in order to simulate a more practical or more likely scenario of variable rates of return. So the way Snap does this is it generates 101 potential future return sequences based off of your input expected rates of return and historical volatility that we've seen in the market. And then it ranks those returns from the worst case scenario down here all the way to the best case scenario up here. So when we're stress testing a plan, we can choose to do that in a number of ways. One option is to use the 20th worst case scenario. What this is going to do is it's going to run returns through our projection that are worse off than about 80% of the future outcomes that Charles can expect to see given our input assumptions. So there's a very good chance that Charles is going to experience something better than these returns, but we want to show him what would happen to the projection if he did live through some of these lower than expected return scenarios. So we'll apply these rates to the plan, and then we'll see what impact that would have on his financial circumstances. As we look at the rate columns for each of the accounts, we can see that those are now adjusted for the equity, cash, fixed income values in our randomized return sequence. We can see that some years are quite good, other years have bear markets, and it varies throughout the projection. But in this particular case, if he were to live through this rate sequence, he would run out of money at age 95 instead of at age 100. So because these are lower than our expected average returns, it is a slightly worse off scenario for him. We can click on recommendations and see how much these lower returns would impact his ability to spend throughout the projection. So in this case, his sustainable spending level starting at age 37 would need to decline, and we can have Snap calculate what that drop would be. So he'd have to reduce his spending by about $2,000 a year in order to avoid running out, given these lower than average return outcomes. So this is how we can kind of ease our clients' concerns about the level of impact that different return outcomes would have on their plan. We can also prepare them for significant drops in the market and the expected rebounds that we typically see following large declines. So it's a great conversation tool and a way that we can put clients ease our clients' stress and put their minds at ease around market returns and volatility. If we go back to scenario 4, which is our home purchase plan that we're going to recommend for Charles going forward, we can go into the client report and customize what pages we want to include. So we have all of those great charts that I reviewed earlier for each of the projections. So we can choose to include those in the report. We also have tables that outline similar information, but in number form. And we have the cash flow summary that shows similar information to the tables that we were looking at on the planning page. When you're ready, you can review the report and then generate the PDF that you can download and share with your client. So I'll just show quickly what that final deliverable looks like. We have our firm logo, a customizable background from the preset options, assumptions about the plan, various charts, and we have the option to add commentary to any of these pages in order to explain specific values or provide additional recommendations or comments. That's a lot of functionality to go over in just under half an hour. So once you do sign up for your trial, I encourage you to check out our help site. So in the top right, you can click on help and then help center. We have a lot of historical webinars that dive more in detail on some of the features that we went over today, such as the automated recommendations tool, the stress testing feature. So you can learn a lot more about any of the specific functionality that you're interested in for your clients and your practice. You can also type in keywords such as inheritance, and you're going to find articles specifically on how to input those types of transactions in your plan. And then you have direct access to our customer success team the moment that you sign up. You can give us a call directly or send us an email through the contact in the top right corner of the help site. So we are here, we're happy to help, keen to answer any questions on your specific plans. But for the time being, I will turn it back over to Alex, and she's going to take us through a few of the next steps and then open it up for questions.
Wow, Steve, thank you so much. That was incredible to watch you build out so many scenarios so quickly. So I'm just going to take back over and share my screen here. Wonderful. So you should all be seeing my screen now. So as Steve just said, we know that was a lot to absorb in a short period of time, but I hope we've been able to show the value that SNAP projections can bring to your practice and to your clients' lives. When you choose to partner with Snap, you're getting a whole lot more than just a financial planning software that's easy to use. The feedback we receive most often from our longtime users is that Snap does two major things better than other providers. Number one is Snap's industry leading customer service and support. Our support team provides dedicated one on one training and onboarding sessions and regularly hosts drop in sessions and live webinar tutorials. This means that a real human being is going to help you as you learn the software. We understand that when you need help, you need it right away. Plus, the team will screen share to ensure the best possible experience. That sounds like something simple, but many other providers don't actually offer that level of service for your customer support. Steve and the team behind him will be there for you every step of the way. Second is our development team. They work tirelessly to take the requests of our users and turn them into a reality. Even today, you've been introduced to some brand new features and updates, but this isn't a rarity. It's what you can expect from the team at Snap Projections. As your practice grows, the software will continue to grow and evolve right along with you. For those of you here today who aren't already using Snap, on our pricing page, you'll see there are two plans for you to choose from as an independent advisor. All features you've seen today are available in our basic plan, which is called Advisor Professional. Remember, stress testing is an add-on, but it's free during your first 14 days. So make sure you enable it right away. Our main module, which is in the center there, is called Advisor Business, and that includes a comprehensive feature for corporate planning, as well as data sharing for teams. If we have any interest in seeing the corporate module, just let me know in the chat and we'll try to include that in our Q&A. So I'm going to drop the link to this page in the chat now, so you all have that before the session closes out, and I will send it out to you via email as well. You will need to enter your credit card details to create your account and access a free trial, but you will not be billed today. Monthly billing will start at the end of your 14-day free trial, and we also offer a full 30-day money-back guarantee on that payment, so you do get a full month and a half of risk-free trial. There are no contracts, and you can also switch to annual billing at any time for a 10% discount. Now, all live event attendees who register for a free trial within the next hour will be entered into the draw to win Snap's dedicated onboarding and training package, a $500 value. You'll receive a 60-minute personalized strategy session, plus be provided with a dedicated support person for 30 days. This means you'll have priority support from a member of our customer success team who will maintain a relationship with you as you learn the program. The winner will receive an email from myself tomorrow morning. Lastly, for our current SNAP users, a reminder of our referral program. If you send a fellow advisor our way and then they complete their free trial and become a paying client, you will receive a free month of service. And there's no limit on how many times you can do this. Plus, the person you refer will receive a 30-day free trial instead of the regular 14 days. So it's a win-win. I'll drop the link that takes you to the page you're seeing on my screen now. You can access this anytime within the Snap Help section by typing in the word referral, just the same way as you just saw Steve do for inheritance, but I will pop that in the link there for you. And this is just for the current SNAP users to explain exactly how the referral program works. And this applies to all of you who do decide to start a free trial with us today as well. Moving forward, you will be able to access the referral program. Okay, so with that, let's hop into the Q&A, and I will get Steve to take back over the screen, and then just let me check what we have coming up for questions here. Yes, pricing is in Canadian dollars. And I guess the next question we can show here, we've got quite a few people saying, yes, please show us the corporate module, Steve.
Okay, terrific. So within Snap, we do have a dedicated corporate feature. So you can see at the top left of the planning page, I have the option to add a corporation to the projection. I'll click this and we'll start with the input flow. It's very similar to the process that we went through for creating Charles's original projection. We have the scenario setup, which has the corporate information, assets, debts, insurance, and settings for the corporation. Then we'll be able to go to the planning page and customize values for the corporation. And then there are specific pages included in the client report for that corporate information. So I'll start off by inputting the corporation name, corporation XYZ. We can input the province. The small business deduction is pre-filled. We can customize those if you do have a unique client situation where you need to do so. SNAP is meant to model both the holding company and the operating company in one single entity in the software. It's built with that integration in mind so that if there's passive investment income above the 50,000 annual limit, then this small business deduction will start to get reduced appropriately. Similar, if there's excess retained earnings in the operating side of the projection, that's going to flow automatically into the capital assets of the holding company side of the entity. So we'll show that in just a brief moment. You can also enter refundable dividend tax on hand, capital dividend account, and general rate income pool values for the starting corporate entity. So if you know what these values are, you can pre-fill them, but you don't need them in order to create a plan in SNAP. Leaving these values as zero is just going to make a slightly more conservative projection because we're not going to factor in those tax advantages in the plan. If you are creating a plan with a fairly comprehensive corporation, you can use the help section to go to the help center and download our client questionnaire that has fields for gathering corporate information and even information about the contact for the accountant and a lawyer for the corporation if needed. As we continue down, we also have the ability to customize the ownership of the corporation and then indicate how you would like the corporate estate tax calculations to be done. We have two methods in the software. You can either assume that everything gets liquidated in the corporation and then paid out by dividends, or you can assume that the corporate shares are sold and a capital gain is realized by the final estate. We have lots more information about these assumptions and the settings in our help site under various articles. We're always happy to point you in the right direction if you aren't able to find what you're looking for. I'll proceed through the scenario setup and add an investment account to the corporation. We'll start off with a value of $500,000, currently invested as 30% fixed income, 70% equity. We can add multiple capital assets, multiple real assets, and then we can also include debts in the corporation similar to what we saw on the personal side. We have the corporate life insurance module that automatically tracks the cost base, the death benefit, and then the capital dividend account at the very end when the death benefit is received. You can also input cash surrender value, and we can model policy loans and lots more other transactions. So if corporate life insurance is part of your practice, we do have a very robust feature now available in the software. And we did a recent deep dive webinar on this feature. So you can learn more about that from our help site. With those settings in mind, I'll click on planning pages and just show a couple of input options. So we can see on the left-hand side, we have the active portion of the corporation, and then on the right-hand side, we have all of the passive investment aspect. So we could model active business income going down until Charles is age 64. We could show salary, expenses. For now, I'll just leave it as active business income. SNAP pays the required taxes on the investment income and any passive investment income. And then we can see that the deposits, the retained earnings, are automatically added to the investment account balance. So that continues to grow throughout the projection. And then starting in retirement, we could choose to pay out non-eligible, eligible, or capital dividends in any year of the plan in order to flow the corporate money back to the personal side to be used for spending purposes. So I could input a $200,000 a year non-eligible dividend. And then when I hit run corporation, SNAP is going to make the required withdrawals in order to pay the dividend and pay any calculated taxes. So that's a quick overview of the corporate module. We do have other dedicated resources if you'd like to learn more, or you can send us an email with any questions.
Fantastic, Steve. Thank you. A few different questions coming in about expenses. So can you show us the options for building in expenses to the plan, and also just cover how those expenses are accounted for within the ATS and how that differs from when a debt is set up, if that makes sense?
Yeah, so there's a few different types of expenses that a client might have. Some are recurring expenses like their groceries or transportation costs. Some are one-time expenses like a gift to kids or a renovation. So depending on the type of expense, there are different ways that you can model that in the software, and each will have different pros and cons. So we like to go over those options and then figure out what's the best fit for the advisor's need. In terms of some of the options, we can either adjust the after-tax spending in order to include that additional expense in the plan. So let's say that the client plans to spend $60,000 a year each year of the plan. We can input that spending here, and SNAP will automatically generate the required cash flow in order to spend at that level. We could also come down to a future year and increase that just for a single year by 20,000. So we could add a spike to the client spending on a one-off basis if we wanted to model an additional $20,000 need. If we want, we can leave the after-tax spending constant throughout the software and then use an alternate approach, which is to add in a one-time expense or an itemized expense in the plan using a negative income value. So we would add something like renovation. We'll set that up with no tax implications and a $0 amount to start. And then on the planning page, we would input a negative $20,000 value in the year of the expected transaction. So we can model a renovation in that way if you'd like. I do know that our product manager, Jim, is in the process of interviewing and talking with existing clients about building out the expense functionality in SNAP in order to create a more customizable and advanced feature for this type of planning. So I am excited that that's on the horizon. And if you have any interest or questions about that feature, any needs that you'd like considered in our analysis, please reach out to our support team so that we can gather that feedback and pass it along to Jim.
Excellent. Thank you, Steve. And I think we have time to squeeze in just one more question here. Can you show us our options for comparing these scenarios on the estate tables there?
Yeah, so within the planning page, if I scroll to the right-hand side, we'll see the tax and estate information. And then for Charles's personal plan, we can see his projected estate before tax each year of the projection. So if I click on the estate before tax in any given year, I'll have a summary of what that estate is made up of. So he's got some personal assets, he has some debts, we have the corporation that we just added to the plan for this Q&A period, and then we have taxes on that estate, which brings us to a net after-tax estate value of $464,000. In the bottom here, we can compare that scenario with any of the other scenarios that we've created for Charles today. So if I look at scenario 6 with the home purchase that we updated for the Q&A period, he has slightly higher capital assets than in the original home purchase scenario, because you'll recall that I adjusted the assumed spending in the first year of the plan. So as a result, we didn't need to use up as much of the, or we were able to save some of the additional cash flow. So this is where we can compare different scenarios across key metrics such as assets, after-tax estate value, and we can customize which plans we would like included in this comparison tool. If you ever have more than you want to have, we have steps in order to customize the plans that are being compared to one another.
Fantastic. Thank you. Well, everyone, we are out of time. Thank you so much for being here live with us today. And I hope this has been a valuable session for all of you. I know we still have a bunch of unanswered questions. I do apologize that we are out of time, but if your question wasn't answered live, I will follow up with you via email to make sure you get everything you need. A few questions about the recording of the session that will process and be sent out via email in about 2 hours. And then I'll be sending out a separate email momentarily with that link to get you all registered for your free trial to make sure you are entered in for the draw. So enjoy the rest of your day, everyone, and I'm looking forward to continuing the conversation offline. Bye for now.